IBIKITALKS, I'm back again, another
Yes,
series.
my name is Kuro. I'm an artist, musical artist, uh, producer, singer, rapper. Uh, yeah, um, yeah. And also, I'm also an actor as well, and also a music producer, educator as well. At the same time, yeah.
So yeah, let's start with, how did you where did it start for you in terms of music? Like where did it start for you?
So, music started for me. I feel like it started with me with the keyboard. So literally the keyboards like I told you about today.
Yeah.
The Yamaha what's called Yamaha PSR 210.
Yeah.
Literally that was bought the same day. No, sorry, not same day. Same year that I was born. And yeah, I think that's something that I was playing around with.
Mm-hmm.
Just playing with the demo button, and then just playing around with it. Nothing serious, I couldn't see it a far ahead in time. Oh yeah, I'm gonna be a musician or anything like that. It was more so playing around with it. But I feel like that was sort of the first sort of introduction. Then it got into from watching anime, playing video games, some of the soundtracks on there. Yeah. Me and Tekano, we used to try and search for the sheet music,
Mm-hmm.
and then try and learn to play it, or either play it by ear. I feel like I was I think that's something. Even if we couldn't, and the thing is if we couldn't find the sheet music, for me I just learned to play things by ear, even though it wasn't the exact notes or it wasn't in the exact key. And even that period in time, I didn't know anything about music. I had no music knowledge or training or anything like that. So that's mainly where it started. And then I started to learn music in secondary school, and then I got a bit of insight. And then from us moving to Scotland in 2007, and then learning music, having a bit more of an introduction into music from music class. I feel like I basically went from there, and I had a bit more of a foundation in terms of the basics. It was that, and then getting piano lessons, and even though I didn't go as far as I could have with the piano lessons,
Mm-hmm.
that still helped me. That still helped continue to build the foundations.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to learn songs online. Some of my favorite songs. There was just one specific YouTube channel. I think it was called Progress Music 24. I think they changed their name, and they had various different songs, which you could learn. And I think some of the ones I learned was I think it was a Frank Ocean song, and then I think there was a Childish Gambino song, and there was a few others. But then what I ended up doing was, from learning all those songs, I basically, from the amount of theoretical knowledge I had at the time,
Mm-hmm.
I just took the course from even all of the songs, and just created something using them. Then it was then a thing of let me actually use to my advantage the fact that my fingers are quite long, to just stretch my fingers as far as possible and just try something and just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how I ended up making my first track, Limbo. And that was a composition, and this is I think around 2014, 15. It had been with me roughly since then.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just stayed with me. I had a few that were with me for a few years, that were just in my head, and it was whenever I'd go on the piano, it was just muscle memory. And then it was 20, what was it called? 2018 that I actually made the track. And and that was in like proper studio. That was in Glasgow, so I was able to record it through this workshop program called Sonic Youth Program, a part of Green Door Studios, around what was it around? It's quite close to Suki Hall Street. But yeah, it was around there. So it was Green Door Studios, and they had this program. It was like for like a few months, and basically you got taught like the basics, the foundation of like sound, like the history of sound, and in music and production, how to set things up, and also working like sort of like peer, working like peer to peer. Like we had like about 6 people that were doing the workshop, and like some people would like play something. It could be like a cover, or it could be something that's like made up.
Yeah.
Very spontaneous, and then another group would help, would engineer or mix like what has been made, or try like their own take on the mixes. So things like that. So, and I was using an analog mixing desk. So that was like, was building the foundations a bit more in the technical aspect. And through that program, I basically got like free recording session, free mixing session, which kind of went on for like maybe 2 months roughly, like long. And yeah, from there, like that's how I made Limbo. And yeah, that's the first thing I ever recorded, and I think that's probably like the proudest. That's the thing I'm most proudest of, that track, and it pretty much like laid the foundations in terms of like, I'll say like the journey I've been on, like just creating music, and I'd say like where I am now. But I definitely feel like through collaborations have helped me look at things from a different perspective and approach things differently, and learn to think outside the box a lot more. But yeah, and in fact, where I'm right now, I think, so since I finished creating the track Limbo, that was 2018, I was basically on the pursuit of making a project. So it's like, okay, cool, I've got like a track, and I think the next thing's now a project. So I feel like that was like the next step, making a project, and that process is tough, like, because you think, oh yeah, like I've got now this first idea,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden, the issue was, I felt like I had like, as I was creating more and more stuff,
yeah,
even around whatever, like that specific idea I wanted to put out,
yeah,
I felt like I was already past it.
yeah,
But then I feel like it was a thing of like, I was already past it, and also it didn't feel right to me.
yeah,
So it was also a process of like not just making stuff that I was creating on feeling, but also understanding how to actually produce. And make my music, try and make my music like less try and control the chaos of what I'm trying to create. There was something that a director said to me on a film that we were working on. I'm going off on a sidebar, but there's something the director said to me. This was like around 2019. His name's Ade. So he told me like you can only be creative for so long. Like you have to have like technical proficiency to navigate what you want to do and how you want to express yourself. Because what you'll find is that the further you go, and this is why it's important to be self-aware and have active and to always actively reflect. So any action you make, any decision you make, you're aware of whether it feels right or not. and you went, oh, okay, maybe I approach this way. Oh, this wasn't quite right. Oh, maybe I should do this time. So having that awareness, and so the reason why I'm saying this is like having that awareness, you then start to have moments where you're insecure. And the thing that's so interesting is that insecurity is basically an answer to a question you're trying to figure out. Like, if you're something that you're trying to achieve and you feel insecure, then basically there's something that you need to find out to be able to actually achieve what you're doing. Which is why it's so important to always ask people questions.
Yeah.
And if you're like, oh, how do you do this? Search for the answer. Or ask someone. Because I think I feel like it's so easy to like go through life or go through a certain process in whatever field you're in and never ask questions and assume that and having this thought inside yourself that you will be silly for asking, you're silly for not knowing something.
Yeah.
And I think like it's accepting that, because there's actually this talk I went to yesterday, and because I'm a part of the, like as I mentioned earlier, that that music producer educator.
Mm-hmm.
So I work with CDR, where they do like music producer club at Stratford Youth Zone.
Okay.
And that's for like young people from roughly like ages 13 and up, like and we like teach young people to produce music through Ableton. But it's not really just about Ableton, it's mainly about facilitating a space for them to create what they want and giving them that push, teaching them to be self-sufficient. And the great thing as well is that I've seen that there's a lot of peer support between the other young people there. So yeah, basically we did like two taster sessions at South Bank Central yesterday, and the main modulator of CDR, Tony Nwachukwu, he basically did like a presentation, like a workshop, kind of giving an introduction to what Music Producer Club is about, what is an artist, what is a music producer, a bit of backstory to the music industry, the music business, how an artist and a producer are linked. And so there was a panel talk with some people that work at Stratford, panel talk with people who work at South Bank Central, and also some external people.
Yeah.
And what was great about the talk is they gave insight into their field, how you get into their field, where they started, and also there was a Q&A as well, where everyone touched on networking and feeling insecure, feeling like you can't ask questions, and you know there was a mention of looking at your peers, people that you know, and just asking questions, and it's okay to ask questions, and I think that's the most important thing regarding like insecurity in any shape or form. It's just asking questions and trying to find out rather than keeping quiet, which I think is like super important.
So as you say that, do you feel there's like any insecurities in you, like as you're starting to make like music, like starting to like developing it more?
Yeah, I think it's like up until now, I feel like I've accepted the fact that like I'm not perfect, and that I actually have no ceiling. I've never had a ceiling. I think it's accepting that. Because I think if you always think, because it's back to what I'm saying with never asking questions, it's like you want to stay in the same place. Mm-hmm. It's like you're making a decision to actively stay in the same position. And I feel like I think through the process of me making music, since I started making music, I feel like I had various moments where I actively stayed still. I reached a certain point in whatever musical space or sound I was in, I was kind of like, oh yeah, like that's it. Even though I moved on from one project idea to another, I would stay in that space.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would realize there'll be certain things, or like people like friends showing me music, or going to see a performance or anything, and it would then make me think that to actually, and it wasn't because I felt like intimidated at all, or felt like, oh, I need to make music like this. I feel like I feel like inside of me I need to make music that actually resonates, that I can sit and listen to, and I'll be like, yeah, I actually feel that.
Yeah.
You know, that actually feels like me. That feels like something I would actually say. So I feel like, yeah, it's important to understand that you have no ceiling, and that you're never gonna hit perfection, but it's always to strive to express what you're trying to accomplish to the fullest, and finding any means to get to that goal. It's not easy. So even like going back to like trying to make a project, so because I realized I went off in a full tangent.
Yeah, that's cool, good.
But yeah, it was a tricky process. And I think one of the tricky part of that is, and this feeds into like insecurity, is like not knowing how to like do certain technical things such as mixing, or just setting like various production or creative like techniques and stuff like that. It was quite tricky, and I felt a bit insecure by it. And there was on my first performance I did at Off the Cuff in Heron Hill. I performed what I thought would be like my first project, and it felt good. It felt like amazing, like that. I fully like rehearsed, like got my head into it, and what happened is that I feel like during that period in time, I made more songs that were just like where my headspace was at. But also as well, I felt like even with the production, I actually took a step back and looked at it, and I felt, nah, I can't use pre-made presets that already have a pattern or rhythm. I want to be able to do this myself. I want to be able to actually go in from the beginning and create something from scratch. I don't want something that's been pre-made or something that's like, you know, so I want to be able to create these things myself. So I then got to the next project idea and was very like connected to that, but then even with that there's still some insecurity regarding that. There was a lot I learned from that process because it forced me to learn to mix it myself.
Yeah.
And I also, by default, I think producers are mixers, because when you've drawn out an idea, or even if it's not the full thing, you balance the levels to taste, like the volume and everything, all the like effects and everything. And it was only until early this year that I then was thinking, I came upon a different project idea. Yeah, totally different project idea. So it was fun, and it was interesting because it was because of was because of like two conversations that I had that pretty much like led me to making an entirely new project, which is where I'm at right now, and also where, like, for me, I feel was like the project I've been meaning to make. And that's like, and then now you think 2018, now it's 2022, and now I'm in the process of, you know, getting ready to put out the project. And yeah, it was pretty, and these things didn't just come right away. It happened it happened due to a situation that made me feel uncomfortable and self-conscious. Like a musical situation, musical opportunity that I was involved in, and that kind of left me a bit uninspired. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with my friend, Ola El Hassan. Like it was that party that we had a conversation about. I honestly can't remember how we came up with this conversation. So it was so the conversation, like, I don't know how it, like she just said like vanilla and the ancestors, and I was just kind of like, I was like, that definitely feels like something, like that feels like something that, yeah, it just resonated with me. And
what, vanilla and ancestors?
And ancestors, yeah. I don't know how how we came up with that, but then it became like, yeah. Well, for me, I thought because I was like, yeah, we should definitely work on something, work on something like surrounding that. Then I think we saw each other again and we spoke about it, and then I was like, yeah, like let's meet up, let's work on something. And I feel like for me, I was quite terrified to even think of the prospect of working with Ola, because Ola's like a spoken word artist. Like she's an engineer, but in fact, to even say that she's a spoken word artist, she's like more than that. And yeah, her written work is just like, it's powerful. Like she never wastes her words. She puts real meaning and thought behind what she says. And it's just like, it's incredible. It's incredible to even like know Ola. And then, like from this eventual meet up to like work on something, yeah, I think that moment, like when we first met, when I brought to like just talk about our musical backgrounds, you know, what music we're interested in, and just like bringing like my speakers over and everything, and then literally working on a beat from scratch, like just like a rough idea, and then her recording over it, and it just felt like, just from the talk that we had, it felt like I was almost like reborn. It felt like a rebirth for me. And it put me into a whole different space. And then I think 2 days after or a day after, I made this like track that was basically almost like, it carried the energy of like we literally went to the Part 4 walk, and it captured the same energy. So that was, for me, was a pivotal moment. And I think also just being around her and just seeing her process as well actually pretty much inspired the project. And also as well, like from a friend of mine, Naja, yeah, like we had a conversation, it was after the show, and yeah, like from that conversation, like she just mentioned me like, oh yeah, like you should put out singles, you know, and this was for the previous project idea that I had.
Yeah.
And from there, I went back to 2 ideas like that I'd worked on, like, slightly further back, and yeah, like I just like rearranged them, changed the tempo, and completely changed the lyrics and brought more meaning to them. And yeah, like those, like Ola and Naja were like two of the most important like pieces in terms of like that really kind of like there was like a click in my brain.
Yeah.
It's funny I'm saying click in my brain. It's funny, like there's a lyric on like the new project that I say click on my brain. But yeah, it was just like a complete rebirth. So like I feel like this project to me is almost like they're like direct offspring of like my track Limbo. And I feel like the space I'm in now, right now, I feel like I'm about to go into another sort of like rebirth. So for me, like at the moment now, I'm just like looking to get better at my musicianship right now. But then also like focusing just like on that project. Yeah.
So as you're explaining Limbo, could you talk like, you know, viewers like what Limbo's about? Like what inspired you to make the track Limbo?
So back to what I mentioned earlier with the creation of it, it was more so an idea and a sound and a feeling. So when I made it at Green Door Studios, it was just the instrumental. And in terms of like my process as an artist, well, as a music creator, I feel like I'm a producer first. I feel like I'm more of a musician first, and then the lyrics come. So so after I made the instrumental for Limbo, and when it was untitled, I had no idea what because it was Sam the modulator for the Sonic Youth program I was doing. He was in the mixing session with me.
Yeah.
He asked me like, have you got any lyrics? I was like, oh, it's like, no, I don't. So then I had to go. I was like, oh, I'll go away and I'll figure something out. And then I was just like listening to it. I think it was quite late at night. Just like listen to it like over and over again to try and get something. And I couldn't quite figure out. But then something happened where I was listening to it and it made me fall asleep. And then I just like woke up all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was just like one time or was it maybe a few times I was listening to it. But then I was thinking about how it's actually making me feel. The fact it's making me fall asleep when I'm waking up, falling asleep and waking up, then sleep, waking up. And if you think about those two states of being asleep and being awake, I feel like there's something in between that. So there's like a between space. And then what I came to was thinking, okay, limbo. So like being between that space of being asleep and being awake. And then I started to come up with the lyrics bit by bit, and to me, limbo is a space that you're in when you don't quite know where you are. You can be in there for a short period of time, you can be there in a long period of time. But then really it's just about you trying to figure out how to get out of it. And find some sort of balance. But then this is the thing, like, even like the meaning of like the word limbo to me has almost like changed a little bit. That's me personally. But yeah, more specific to what the song is actually about. I left it open for interpretation. Because even some of the stuff I'm saying in it is like quite cryptic, but also like there are things I mention. I don't really. That's the thing. I'm very unspecific in terms of like. There's no like information where I'm mentioning a certain person.
Yeah.
And it's very introspective. And it's really about. Yeah, it's really about just getting out of like a rut and getting out of a situation. And asking, like, trying to find like the answer. Yeah, there's a lyric in there saying like trying to find a way out. Yeah, and this links back to what I mentioned regarding insecurity. It's like you're trying to find the answer to whatever is making you feel the way that you're feeling. So yeah, it's really about that. But then this is the thing that's important, is that there's no happy ending. And it's so interesting because the way that the song is structured, there's no chorus, there's no verse. It's not like a pop song. There's no catchy hook. It's just like a continuous trail of thought. It's just like going forward. It's like there's no returning back to anything.
Okay.
And I think and that's life. You don't really return back to, well, you can, but in terms of time and life, you're always moving forward. So like, I feel like it's beginning at the end. That you're at the beginning of an issue or a problem, and then you're finding the solution, and then it's solved. But the reality is that you're going to be back in limbo again, and that's something that I've accepted, is that I'm never going to be I'm never always going to be happy. I'm never always going to be sad, but I'm always going to be somewhere in between, because human beings are complex. There's no happy ending. It's like life isn't a fairy tale.
Yeah.
So like, yeah. Because I end the song with "Don't lose your composure because you'll lose yourself," and it's like, don't forget like who you are.
Yeah.
And that's open to interpretation. Like, don't forget who you are. But I think also, like, what I said about accepting that you're not always going to be happy, or you're not always going to be in one state. You're always going to be in between somewhere, because human beings don't express just one emotion. You've never seen someone who, it really depends. It really depends what's happened in someone's life for them to encounter someone who's just very pure and who's just happy.
Yeah.
Which is not easy, because it really depends on what path of life you've taken, or where you've come from, and what your upbringing. But yeah, that's basically what the song is about. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, moving on to like, in terms of like drama or acting or something that you was doing, what like made you start with like acting? Like?
So, with acting, that's something I wanted to do because I was confident at the time. This was like the last year of school, so this is while we were living in Scotland. This was sixth year.
Yeah.
But the year before, we had like, this is before we were choosing our classes. You have the option of crashing a course. You can crash a course,
yeah.
But the only way that you can do that is if you have got a certain mark in like English or something at intermediate 2. So we had intermediate 2 the highest. And so basically I crashed higher drama, but I wanted to do it because I was confident at the time, in terms of who I was as a person. And yeah, from that process, or entering into it taught me a lot. And I feel like it was from doing the final exam that we did, practical exam.
Yeah.
So we did the Crucible, and we did the scene. I can't remember it was a specific scene, but it was like John Proctor. I was playing John, and it was John, his wife, and the house help in the scene. I feel like that moment is the most pivotal moment, because I went in, and also we had an audience as well.
Yeah.
And I was totally unaware of the audience when I was like performing. That's how like locked in I was. And I think from that, I kind of, it was very interesting feeling, like to be so locked into a role that you had no awareness of the audience, that you were almost as if acting in, like, you were actually living I was living what I was performing. And after like we did the scene, we stepped out into the hallway, and it was like our teachers, so it was Miss Bryce, Miss Workman. So like Miss Bryce said to me like, oh, like, Sakari, like, you've got something. And then Miss Workman told me like, you know, Sakari, when you're on the stage, you have this presence, and I definitely feel like this is something that you should continue. And then I was like going to colleges, like auditioning, and like some of them I didn't get a place, but one of them I did. But then even that period in time, that was like 2013, and we were about to move. And then we moved to Huntingdon, and I think I kind of like switched off from the whole act, like just like continue acting.
Okay.
But then it was, I think I was then thinking of like, oh yeah, just tapping into like A-levels, just doing A-levels. And then, because like, I think while I was thinking about acting, I was also thinking about accounting. And I was looking at some like business sort of like related courses at like some like the colleges in the area. So Huntingdon College, Peterborough College, Cambridge Regional College. But then I don't know, something just like spoke to me where I was like, oh, like, let me see if they have like performing arts course. Let me see if they've got one. And then I got into the like level 3 course at Cambridge Regional College, and that went on for a year. But then basically they had like a 2-year course, 2 year, they had 1 year and then the second year. So the 1 year, second year, and that really like laid the foundations for me as an actor, but also as a singer as well.
Yeah.
I feel like that gave me a lot more confidence in terms of singing, but it also gave me a lot more confidence as a person. And I feel like life has made me a better actor, but acting has made me a better person, because it's made me actually understand how to. It's made me a bit more receptive to people, or try to be receptive, and and then because I finished the course at like 2015, and from that period, like, then I started to find like I did like first short film. It was by a director called Oscar Forshaw Swift, and no, he was helping assist like a student for this summer program that was being held at Fitzwilliam College in Cambridge, and the film was called Lady in Red. that was an interesting experience for like first like short film I did, and it was like no pay at all, and it was just like not even expenses and stuff. But yeah, like that was, I think and the thing that got me to that was through getting like some photos. Like I started off on like this profile called like this casting website called Star Now, and in fact even before then I did a music video with like for this like metal band, sort of metal band. But it was that, and then getting some pictures done, doing that film, and then from doing that film, I spoke to the director that I was assisting, like Zoe, Zoe, who was like making the film Lady in Red. I spoke to the director Oscar, and then he said he was the script that he'd been writing, called Yogurt, and I eventually did that film with him, and yeah, that trailed off into like me doing more like loads of short films, like various different like projects, and then yeah, like eventually like music videos, and then feature films, and then yeah, more short films, and then like eventually led into like me getting into more like getting into like some featured work. I did a film in I did a film last year that was on BBC iPlayer.
What's the film called?
So the film is based on, it's based around an artist called Sign Kid.
Yeah.
Who is who's hearing impaired. So he's a deaf rapper. But if anything, he's just he's a rapper. And it's based around, it's kind of like based in a sort of dystopian, sort of like future, slightly more exaggerated version of like the pandemic.
Yeah.
Of the what's it called, the COVID pandemic, and it is. Yeah, it was an interesting experience. Also, just like when you cause like even through the direction, and when in terms of like signaling, like certain signals or certain prompts for like the scene, and like it made me realize I need to be very much more observant.
Yeah.
And I'm talking less, because sometimes it's so easy to like, just because you've been in this situation before, like you know what you're doing, or like you know how to engage the situation, but just from like listening and just like paying attention, you play your part how you're supposed to. I feel like that was a great experience. Working with that crew as well. Yeah, so the film was called Silent World, directed by Charlie Dennis. And yeah, like that's the thing, in the cast there was like those other deaf actors.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just like deaf actors, it was like people, it's like hearing actors, and actors who were hearing impaired or partially impaired. But yeah, it was, and they had like interpreters on the set as well. So yeah, it was a whole new experience and very insightful. And it's interesting because that then led to me. Coincidentally, like one of the actors that was in Silent World, I also ended up doing a film with in like December that year, December last year, and a film called Night Shift. Her name's Tiana, and yeah, like it was. Yeah, she's partially impaired and like hearing impaired, but she can also do sign language. and we had interpreters on set, but also on the crew we also had people that were hearing impaired.
Yeah.
So I was working with people who were hearing impaired and people who weren't, and making, creating a very inclusive sort of like workspace. I think with the project as well. So the project is basically about so it's surrounded around like Tiana's character, who's a security guard, and she has another colleague, and basically she sees this person that's like distressed, which was my character, going through something, but there's not that much dialogue, and everything is based more through. It's more physical than it is verbal, and it's like there's very small moments where there is like dialogue. And yeah, like the project's like gone through to like a few like festivals, and yeah, it was a great project to be a part of, and the crew was great, but yeah, like it's interesting because like acting has actually been one of the biggest reasons in terms of like it's been a big influence in terms of like how I approach music.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very much connected, and that's also a thing as well. Like one thing that I learned, that everything's connected. So whether you want to be a musician, whether you want to be an actor, whether you want to be a film director or a script writer, and when anything within the arts is all connected, it's all one, and it's being able to look at it as one thing, cohesive, But yeah, I've yet to like get back into acting, because I'd say like I'm on a break at the moment, but I feel like also as well I'm just like living life, but also doing other things in between. But yeah.
So yeah, just to compare like with acting and music, what's like your mental health been within these two things?
I'd say it's like it's been a process. It's been a process getting into it, because it's not easy. I think the feeling of like going to an audition with like 20 other people, 30 other people, however many people, and having the thought in your head, and this is just me personally, but like I'm thinking like I'm preparing to go home. Like I'm not even like, and that, for me, I feel like that was a very unhealthy way of like thinking about it, because then I eventually came to the conclusion that when I go into an audition, it's not about me, because there's so many other people. Like I don't know what they're looking for, so I just have to present who I am to the fullest. That's what's important. That I do my best. If I do my best and I don't get it, I'm happy with that. But then it's then having to be committed to that, because you're committing yourself to getting yourself in a certain position, getting a certain situation, getting a role, and it's a lot. It's not easy, because it's like I have had days, where I don't get a role, or like there's no work for a certain period of time. I don't have any money or anything like that, and it's like, yeah, it's depressing. It is like. It definitely was, and there was a year, I think it was 2017, where I was very much like, and I had auditioned for drama school. This was last year. I think I was going to audition for drama schools, and at the same time I was also auditioning for a play and a feature film, and yeah, I feel like that moment in time was like, yeah, this is kind of like my last shot. Like I think that's it. Like if I don't get this feature film or like even play, I don't really know where I'm gonna go beyond this.
Yeah.
That's where my head was at the time, and it was then going to all of these auditions and not knowing what the outcome was gonna be, and just being like, and hoping for the worst.
Yeah.
And then got an email for the play, saying I got the role. Got a phone call from the director for the feature film, saying I got the role. That for me just turned around everything. And then I got introduced, and I think it made me really just like hone in on whatever was happening, whatever the process was through like the rehearsals for the play. And the play that I did was Food Bank as It Is, directed by Tara Osman. And the feature film I did was called Hilda, and it was by Rishi Pelham. And through both of those processes, I was gauging, my interactions, like, trying to be as natural as possible, trying to be as organic as possible. And those two moments like were very pivotal in terms of like where I was going to go in my acting career. So yeah, those for me were like very important moments, in terms of going to the next space. So that really invigorated me. But then it's like even after that, I was like, but no, after that, between those periods in time, I was still working a job. I was working at Sainsbury's at the time. But then I actually ended up getting a new job. I was working at the Hippodrome Casino, at the Heliot Steakhouse, like as a runner. And it was like, yeah, like, it was just like, it was a lot of hours like trying to like make it work, create a space for like the creative like side of things, make it work. And even with music, because music came in like 2018, really, like in terms of like solo music. So then it was like trying to find a balance for both. And yeah, I think it just got to me like having situations where I didn't have money and I was like constantly like broke and I didn't have much money, and it was, and also not having autonomy, like sleeping over at friends' places, which was something I was grateful for, like super grateful for, that friends were able to give me that space to, stay at that place, like when I was like commuting to London, going for acting jobs, going for, this, going for this event, going for this opportunity. But I think what I was striving towards was autonomy, having that autonomy of your own life, of your own situation. And that's what led me to where I'm pretty much now. Like, I moved to London, like April, started a new job. So, and this is just me personally, like I started and I feel like the full-time, having a full-time job, it's giving me the stability. But at the same time, even with that, it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of hard work, and it's learning to also break habits and be focused.
Yeah.
And trying to and it's a process, like trying to balance anything you're doing outside of it. Even with the music project I'm putting out, it's like, yeah, that's something I'm still micromanaging, and also learning to, and then this is the thing, it's like, I'm saying everything about what I'm doing, but since and I've basically been doing the current job I'm doing for 6 months, I've also been learning to acknowledge where I'm at, how I'm feeling, at moments where I'm where I'm just off balance, knowing that I don't feel quite right, but still engaging in activity, going out, and it's tricky, even it's very tricky, even having to going to work and feeling a certain type of way, you know. But then there's a lot of things that like there's a lot of like habits that I'm learning to break.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not break, but like change and commit myself a bit more to what I'm doing, because that's what's bringing in the money to be able for me to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. It's like, yeah, not everyone gets like, not everyone like has a silver spoon. And the approach I've taken personally, you know, I wouldn't recommend it. You know, there's better ways of like achieving what you want to achieve, but I felt like this was the way that I had to do it. That made sense to me, the way that I approached everything. But I'm saying it's like, this is like the means to an end, but like I'm still going, like I'm still here, I'm still going in the journey. So I still have yet a lot to discover, and this goes back to what I'm saying about the ceiling. Like, I have no ceiling, so the journey continues, and yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's a process, like just taking the time for yourself, you know, and slowing down. It's not always just like, oh, work, because it can come at cost. Because it's like, if your body and your mind is not balanced, how are you even going to achieve? How are you going to approach the work with clarity? How are you going to solve a problem with clarity? How are you going to speak to people with clarity, with a clear mind? How are you going to respond to something that someone said to you with a clear mind? So it's important that you have clarity, and you're balanced when you interact with people, and being able to like express yourself as you are, and not in a state where you project something, and learning to not project things onto people, because it's your responsibility, it's what's inside you. But also at the same time, like I could say that, but it's quite complex, because people can say things to you that, or you know, that can affect you in a certain type of way. But then it's also kind of like learning to. I'm going off in a tangent because I'm about to delve into something that is connected to what I'm saying. But I think it's important that it's important that you are able to like sit with yourself.
Yeah.
You know. But then it's also important to have someone you can talk to. That's also important, because sometimes holding things within yourself, because it's unnatural to be actually holding things in. It's actually unnatural. It's actually good, because the reason why people when they you know, well, the thing is, like, I say like people, but I'm only really speaking from what I'm saying is coming from my own mouth. So I'm only really speaking for myself, or kind of what I gauge and I've observed is that, from experience of interacting with people, is that people sometimes when they express themselves to you in a certain way, is because they're trying to be understood, and that is the way they want to be understood. That's the way they express themselves, and you know, it can be for many reasons, to try and like just due to just from like family, like how they've been raised, you know, and that's like a natural, almost like a default reaction, you know, and they've never quite found a way to like articulate themselves in a different way, you know, but people just want to be understood. People just want to navigate life very comfortably, you know, and it's not easy. And that's the thing, it's like constantly to accept that, like, that it's important to take care of yourself and have a time for yourself to like, to recuperate, to like, to heal, you know, and just take a break and relax, you know. I think because the thing is, I think it's important to understand that, you have a responsibility. You've taken on a role, you've taken on this job, and you have a responsibility. But then in that, you also have a responsibility. There's a responsibility within the time that you have, the spare time you have, to allocate time to just relax. You know, so yeah.
So yeah, just to wrap up the vid, do you have any, words that you have advice for, people that are taking the route of acting and music?
So in terms of advice for acting and music, I would say as I'd say as an actor, I would say whichever area you're in, borough you're in, county, you know, join an amateur, what's it called, theatre group. If there's like a film group, like, join it. Anything in your school, primary school, secondary school, like join any like group that's out there. Community center, join any group that's out there, because, you know, it will then build, because there will be people that are connected to people that are somewhere in the industry.
Yeah.
But then I think it's not just the connections, it's also just like, it's a good starting point to build that experience, and it's a great place to start. Great place to start. And there's a lot of free, you know, there's a lot of free opportunities for like young people from the ages of 18 to 25, even younger. But there's so many opportunities. And also with music as well, exact same thing with music. With music, you know, in terms of like whichever route you want to take, you know, even so much as asking your parents, like, get you an instrument, you know, or even going to like second-hand store, getting an instrument, because nowadays everything is accessible, you know. But then also as well, there's amateur, like, orchestras, they can join amateur music groups, join into those, like, and it's a great starting point that you can go from. And also as well, like, if you want to be like a music producer, like speak to music teacher, see if there's like opportunity to like, be able to get funding for equipment, things like that, so that you can even go and, if you wanted to, create like, a track or something like off like the school orchestra or the school, band, something like that, or like, I would love to record this part, or like, make a track, things like that. So I feel like, there's so many different things that are going on, like youth groups, and especially in London, you have like, with music, you have Roundhouse, they have a lot of initiatives for like young people, and then you also have South Bank Centre, and then even with the Music Producer Club that I'm doing with CDR. But like, I think overall, like, I feel like if you have a skill or interest within acting or music, I'd say like, go for it. Go for it, and join it, and get involved as in many opportunities as possible. And also like, networking is also very important as well. Just speaking with people, like, it can be even so much as you just go into like a talk or something with a director, asking questions.
Yeah.
And even as well, and not just as an actor, but within the film industry, like whatever role that you want to do, or even as a musician, or any space within music, like going to events, going to certain like talks, going to networking events, just chatting with people, just understanding like what do they do, like what is their role, and I'll give you insight into kind of shape like where you want to place yourself, and then you can if you want to take a very specific like traditional route, going through the like education and going to university, then you can kind of get a picture from that. And then also as well, it's like joining, like doing like workshops, internships, shadowing people. I would love to like, I'd love to shadow you. I'd love to, even if it's for free, and then you get insight and you get experience into those processes. And they do like there's various like free programs for like young people, So like search like, and look in your area, look in your borough, and like all these things are there. But definitely speak to the people close to you, speak to the people you know, and like all of these things that you're venturing towards will you know, you know, it may not be the first person you speak to, but it might be the second person or fourth person. So, yeah, I definitely say like, believe in yourself, believe in what you're doing in terms of the approach that you're taking. You know, it's easy to look at someone else's situation, and think like, oh, like I wish I could get into that, you know, or like, yeah, that looks sick, you know. But then when you're doing it and you're in the process and you're in the situation, you realize it's a lot of hard work, you know. And the reason why whoever your favorite artist is, or your favorite actor, or favorite performer, or your favorite director, filmmaker, you know, it's a lot of hard work. That's why it looks so. That's why it looks great. That's why it sounds so good, you know, or looks good, you know, or the writing is great. You know, it's because like a lot of thought and, you know, has gone into it, you know, and dedication and commitment. So I think commitment is super important, you know, and consistency is also key. Practicing your craft as well, you know, in any way, shape or form. I think that's important, you know, and I can't really be very specific because everyone has a very different life or unique situation, you know. So yeah, I think an important thing is like being consistent, you know, in harnessing your skills and your craft, you know, but always asking questions and, you know, and also accepting that even if that you know, you're not perfect, and answering, there's nothing wrong with answering questions. So yeah.
Alright, cool. So yeah, that's the end of the video, guys. Just make sure you follow him. You got any socials? Your socials?
So my socials are so for my music. So my music name on Instagram is Kuro the Nomad. So that's Kuro the Nomad. And also have an acting one as well, and that's Born from Ikiri. So it's Born from Ikiri. So it's IKIRI. So that's But also like my music name is Kuro. So it's KU-RO. And you can find, I've got my track Limbo out at the moment, which you can check on Spotify.
All be put in the description.
Yeah,